A big thank you to all my patrons who support the Engineered Mind podcast. Hi and welcome to the Engineered Mind podcast. In this podcast we cover topics such as engineering, artificial intelligence, neuroscience and other interesting topics to educate, inspire and engineer people's minds all around the world. I'm your host Joseph, and for this episode of the podcast I'm very excited to welcome Chris Williamson to my show. Chris is a TEDx speaker, YouTuber, hosts a podcast called Modern Wisdom and coaches people to get more out of life. He thinks a lot about how to live a good life, finding your purpose, maximizing human performance, productivity, fitness, as well as psychology. His passion lies in learning about himself and the world around us. In this incredibly great podcast, we talked about productivity hacks and its downsides, life, the meaning of it, and death, the concept of hedonic adaptation, success and how to become a better version of yourself, and many more life-changing topics. For updates on upcoming podcasts, projects, and videos, make sure to follow me on Twitter as well as on Instagram. To join my weekly newsletter, engineeredmind.sh, where I share exclusive content, visit yusuf.substack.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's my podcast with the one and only Chris Williamson. So we'll kick things off with a tweet from you, which you tweeted 2 hours ago, which is: the best thing about having a podcast is being able to elevate brilliant people and expose them to a new audience, by Joe Rogan. So I have a brilliant one on my show. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be on the other side of the mic for once.
What we want to start with is, for the audience who doesn't know who Chris is, can you give us like a 1 or 2 minute bio? Who is Chris? What does he do? And so on.
So my name's Chris Williamson. I'm a company director and a podcaster from the northeast of the UK. I was a club promoter for a very long time. I ran my own company from the age of 18 until still now. I was a professional party boy, basically. We have one of the biggest events companies in the UK, but right now during COVID, that's not really happening. I DJ'd for a long time. I'm a commercial model. I've spent time on reality TV. I was the first person through the doors of Love Island season 1 in the UK. I did Take Me Out. So blue tick on Twitter, charcoal toothpaste, all that interesting stuff. And then a few years ago, I kind of pivoted my life, realized that I wasn't really fulfilling myself in the way that I probably should be. And just did a ton of self-inquiry, spent time listening to people and content and reading and learning about me and the world around me and trying to find out who the fuck I was. And the podcast, which I run, Modern Wisdom, was launched almost exactly 3 years ago. In fact, 3 years ago in 2 days' time. And that's been a big part of that learning journey, speaking to people like Seth Godin, Ryan Holiday, James Clear, Aubrey Marcus, a porn star, someone who's trying to message extraterrestrial intelligence, like everyone and anyone. And we're 300 episodes in, and I now somehow actually call that my main job. It blows my mind that that's even a thing, but weirder stuff's happened in 2021, I suppose. And that brings me right up to this moment now, speaking to you.
This is awesome. You're also known for being a productivity, I wouldn't say guru, because the guru's already like pervertized in some way. How do you personally define productivity, and how do you approach productivity?
Productivity is getting more out of less effort. So previously, the traditional version of productivity would be to do with input, process, output. How many resources in terms of raw materials, time, labor, cost, etc. do you need in order to be able to create the kitchen sink, pipeline, car, whatever it is that you're trying to produce? And you can see modern productivity as a mental equivalent of that we are trying to achieve something. We're trying to get some sort of output mentally through less input. So that would be less time, less discomfort, or less effort, I suppose. And I'm not by any means a productivity like perfectionist, but I enjoy refining areas of my life because I like to get things done. I enjoy work. I genuinely enjoy the work that I do. And if I can do more of it, or if the work that I do can be done with less discomfort, then that saves my willpower for the things which genuinely require me to sort of dig into that bank and make a withdrawal from the old willpower reserve. So yeah, I enjoy it. I spend a lot of time thinking about life hacks. One of the most popular series on the podcast is 15 episodes deep of life hacks, like how to make a good toasted sandwich and how to, why you should buy a dog, how to buy a house, the best way to do a mortgage, like everything and anything that we've come up with. And I think a big part of that is, especially with young guys, I can't speak for girls, I don't have a vagina, but for young guys, it's difficult to find a role model if you're our sort of age now, because your parents' generation and yours are very detached. What your parents did and what they know and what you need to do and what you need to know now aren't really very well aligned. Like, I teach, everyone that's listening will have taught their mum or dad how to do internet banking or how to register their iPad or how to load songs onto Spotify or whatever it might be. That's not really the way it used to be. Wisdom used to be disseminated from the older people. Respect your elders. Why? Because they're the ones that have the wisdom. And now it's been reversed. And I think that a lot of the content that you're seeing online are people looking for some form of role model. I mean, definitely do not try and follow me, but there's certain things that some of us have stumbled upon which are effective tactics, and I try to talk about them.
Yeah, I think definitely when it comes to fitness or productivity advice, someone could follow you because you give solid advice on your podcast and on your Twitter profile in general. What hacks do you personally use for your day-to-day life in terms of productivity?
So Alfred is a app for MacBook. It's people that don't use it. It really is a game changer. The main things that I use Alfred for are what's called text snippets. So you can type in a little code and it will expand out into either a word or a full sentence or even a big email paragraph. And that's useful for things that you often type out. So your email address, mine's EML, ADD1 is my home address, ADD2 expands out into my work address. I even have the template that I use to invite podcast guests on is INV1, and that expands out. And then I can add in what I want to talk about, when I want to speak to them, why they should listen. But that just saves time. And the other thing is a clipboard manager. So usually you only have one thing on your clipboard, the last thing that you copied, whereas with Alfred you have like the last 200 entries, which means that you can copy all the stuff you need to do in one batch and then paste it all in as well. It really is a game changer. Other stuff, in terms of techniques, I'm a big fan of the GTD method. So David Allen's Getting Things Done. Mm-hmm. I use OmniFocus, which is my task manager, in order to organize that. I'm still transitioning into it, but I find it very good. Alternatives for that would be Things 3, which is a little bit more lightweight and really good to use. I'm a huge fan of Kindle reading and also Readwise, which is a highlight delivery service. Anyone that follows me on Instagram will see that I upload pretty much every day some quotes from books, and that tends to be what Readwise has re-delivered me. So you highlight something on your Kindle, it syncs with your Readwise account automatically, and then Readwise will email you a selection every morning, and it's kind of like spaced repetition for remembering the best things that you've learned from books. I'm a huge fan of morning routines. I think that getting the morning right is one of the best ways that you can ensure you absolutely own the rest of the day. If you do win the morning, you do tend to win the day, in my experience. Mm-hmm. So I have a sunrise alarm clock behind me, which means I'm woken up by light rather than sound. I meditate, journal, I do a little bit of rehab movements. I read for about 15 minutes. I do some breath work. I go for a walk. And by 9 a.m., 8:30, 9 a.m., I've done like 5 or 6 things that I know are going to make me better for tomorrow. And strategically, other than GTD, first things first is probably the biggest change I've made this year, which is I do the thing which is going to make the biggest impact on my progress long-term first, before I do anything else. And I plan the thing that I'm going to do the night before. And that means that when I get up and when I sit down, if the rest of the day gets completely sideswiped by me being a waste man and looking at social media too much, or some sort of catastrophe chaos at work or with the podcast or with life, I know that I've still got the main thing I needed to do for that day, which moves me towards my goals. I got that sorted. So, I mean, that's a short selection. If anyone wants to see a list of 200 life hacks, they can just go to chriswillex.com/lifehacks, and there's a free list of like everything that I think on there. But That's some of the ones that come to mind.
Yeah. How do you generally see that in terms of productivity? Because there's this industry of self-help, which is kind of, we all know these guys like, for example, Dan Locke and so on. A lot of people think that this industry is kind of not attractive anymore. For some people it is, because it drowns them into a world of thinking they achieve something where they're actually achieving nothing. Do you think productivity is also such an area of self-help?
Interesting question. Yeah, it's an interesting question. My belief at the moment is, I'd be interested to know if you agree, I think people are very obsessed with the modern productivity movement and the longevity or bioextension movement due to a fear of death.
Yes.
I think that people believe if I can get more done in less time, it's almost like I'm not dying as soon. I can live more life before life finishes. And I think deep down, that's one of the reasons that people do it. What do you think? Do you agree?
Definitely. Is that something you're working on because you're working on your long-term goal? There's something called the Immortality Project, which is like, we are afraid of death. So that's why we want to leave something on Earth, whether that's writing a book, whether that's a podcast, because we're afraid of dying. We want to leave something here on Earth. As I mentioned, whether it's the show between us now, which we are recording right now, because we are afraid that once we die, people will forget us. And we want to leave something on Earth to make it long-living, right? And everlasting.
Yeah, I think a lot of the problem that we're seeing with the modern productivity movement, as far as I can see, and don't get me wrong, man, like I'm still deep in this, so I'm speaking to myself. I'm telling myself these takeaways. But Alan Watts has this quote, you can become altogether so consumed with trying to improve your life that you altogether forget to live it. And constantly believing that joy or happiness or satisfaction is to be found when I've done X, when I've completed Y, when I've achieved Z, it is a misnomer, because tomorrow is never, ever, ever going to come. It will always continue to move away from you. And chasing that dragon of satisfaction through productivity, it needs to be shortcutted. It has to be. Everybody that's listening, anyone that's a type A personality that's listening, who's constantly chasing that next thing, you have to find joy today. And it's hard. I know it's hard, because it feels like by giving yourself that pass to say that it's enough, to say that I'm satisfied, I'm happy, I'm grateful for the things that I've done. Our fear, our internal fear, is that it's going to demotivate us from continuing to be hungry to go and get it again, or to go and get it more. And that's wrong. That's not the way it works, because you're only ever going to achieve what you're going to achieve. And whether you decide to frame that as I've done well or I haven't done enough, it doesn't matter. And the line between being tough enough to motivate yourself to go forward and compassionate enough to be grateful for the things that you've done is far wider than most people realize.
Mm-hmm. How do you personally approach this problem? Do you often think about death?
Yeah, I do. Not always in the perfectly stoic sort of memento mori way. Sometimes I just fear it. I've got two parents and I'm an only child. So, when one of those passes, I'm not going to have a brother or sister who's going to be able to support me. Like I fear them passing. I've never had to deal with anyone dying before. The biggest thing that I think, one of the biggest changes that's reframed life for me has just been realizing quite how short it truly is. Anyone that wants to swallow the red pill on this hard, Sam Harris, Death and the Present Moment. It's a 20-minute talk that's been edited on YouTube, and it's got background music behind it from a talk that he gave a few years ago. And basically he says that our minds are consumed with things that don't really matter, and we only realize this too late. We know that when we look back, we'll constantly detest the things that consumed our attention on a day-to-day basis. And we all know that this is coming. And you can do this. You can work this out quite easily by thinking, what have I done over the last week that I'm going to remember when I'm on my deathbed? And if there's nothing there, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are we here? The only way, the only reason that we are here is to live a life that we, in retrospect, are grateful that we lived. The present moment is something that we need to exist in right now. because that's all that there is. But oddly, the present moment is incredibly fleeting. And it's only in retrospect that we actually live our lives. Like when people say, I can't believe that time is moving so quickly, life's going so fast, they don't mean that. Time moves relativistically. It's always at the same time for you. It's moving at the same pace. You have the same number of hours now as you did when you were 4 years old, when life seemed to go so slowly. What was the difference? It was the way that you framed your experience. It was a number of new, novel, and intense things that you did on a day-to-day basis. It was your learner's mind. It was the fact that you approached things with a beginner's sense. That's within your power right now. You have the chance, the opportunity today, tomorrow, for the rest of your life to sink yourself into the moment-to-moment experience of whatever it is that you're doing. To do in the present what you in the future will be happy that you did, as opposed to something that you're going to regret.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I'm completely aligned with you here. How do you personally do that? Because you have this project that you're building, right? What is the life goal for you? What is your purpose on Earth? What would you say?
I've got a good example for that. So we hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube recently, and that was a goal that we'd been working toward for a long time. And I sat down with my video guy, who's the only other person that's a part of this project, and we were talking about what are our goals for 2021. And immediately both of us fell into the quantifiable metrics of success, hedonic adaptation game. Or, well, if we can get to 250K by sort of October time, maybe that'll be 300 by December. And then that means that we've got a good chance of hitting 1 mil by like by the end of 2022. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this isn't even 2021 and I'm planning about the thing I want by 2023. So I kind of like shook my head. It's like when sort of flies are around your head when you're away on a holiday and somewhere hot, and you kind of need to just get rid of them. These sort of ego-driven, base, very primitive thoughts. And I sat down with Dean again, had another conversation. I was like, man, like we should have one goal simply, and that is to produce the best quality videos and podcasts that we can. If all that we're doing is providing as much insight as we can on a week by week basis, the performance and everything else will look after itself. It doesn't matter. None of the other stuff matters. And I think that focusing, it's cliche to say, but for anyone that needs reminding of it, the process is all that matters. There is no destination. There is only the journey there in a very, very, very real way. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google hedonic adaptation and it will come up straight away. But you're not going to be satisfied when you reach the thing. You're going to feel satisfied on the way to the thing, and it's never, ever, ever going to change. So my goal is to provide the best insight that I can. There's a few ways that I do that. I like to come up with novel ideas. I like to challenge people. I like to make them feel uncomfortable because it forces them to address their own assumptions about the world. I like to be compassionate. I think that using a colorful vocabulary is a beautiful way. Articulating yourself in a precise and erudite manner is a very wonderful way to brighten people's lives, the sort of people that I want to reach out to. I want people to feel like they're not alone. I want them to feel like I'm vulnerable too, and it's okay, and it's a part of being a human, and it's not signaling that I want their sympathy. It's simply letting them know that there are other people out there who feel precisely the same way that they do. And man, like if I do that, fuck the subscribers. Like it doesn't matter. I don't care, because I would sooner take 10 people's lives changed than 10 million subscribers. And I know that in my heart of hearts. And I just need to keep coming back to that every time I open the YouTube Studio app to check how many more subscribers I've got today. I just need to remind myself, nah, that's not the metric. You're not going to see how many people's lives you've impacted, but remember that that's the process. Remember that that's the goal.
This is so funny that you said it, because I have exact the same view on this topic. Because in the beginning, when I had like 400 or 500 subscribers, you were refreshing the YouTube Studio app like every 5 seconds. It felt like every 5 seconds, and nothing changed. But rather work on the goal, right? Work on how can I improve my podcast, my videos. Maybe I have a new idea which I want to implement. How can I touch people's lives, maybe change their career path? And then you see the subscribers go up, and then once you refresh, you see, oh, it's 700 now. And like actually not looking at the goal, like or at all the numbers, makes it much more comfortable.
Exactly. It's the same as the way that is it Schrodinger's cat? Where you sort when you don't look at it, that's when it actually does the work. And yeah, man. I mean, another thing to consider here is if your self-worth is hinged on how society or the people around you or some objective metric of success is gauging you, you are taking all of the power of self-esteem and outsourcing it to someone that isn't you. You should be in control of your self-esteem. You should be in control of how you think about who you are. And yet, because of money for 10,000 years since the agricultural revolution, because of property for, maybe 1,000 years since people have started to be able to own homes, and 500 years marrying for status, and then 50 years up to the social media age, which is quantifiable metric of reputation is social media. Constantly just externalizing our sense of self-esteem. Mm-hmm. It's a path to misery, man. And here's a good example I often think about. Look at your grandparents. Your grandparents aren't playing status games. Why? Because it doesn't matter. When there's not that much life left, it doesn't matter anymore. But all of us don't have that much life left. No one does. No one's got that much life left. At best, someone's got 100 years and they've just been born now. There's not that long to go. So yeah, very much, I think, focus on thinking about what you want to do with life, and then ruthlessly go after that in a way that's going to make you happy.
Yeah, excellent. I love it, Chris. Also, considering the fact that once you're 60 years old and you sleep the third of your day, you basically sleep 20 years, which is amazing if you think about it. And also a bit, I'm not sure, a lot of people might be frustrated. I'm not sure who said it. I think Muhammad Ali, who did this calculation in a live interview. I have so many years to live. I sleep so many years and so on. It was quite funny to see that one. Regarding the checklist, do you think a lot of people live by a checklist, some kind of grocery list that once I'm married, I make society happy? Because I'm approaching my 30s now. I'm not sure how old you are.
32.
And people around you are like, man, you're 32 or 29 and you're still not married. How do you personally deal with that? It's okay, fuck off, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, that's one response. I don't know. Personally, no one's ever told me what to do. Mum and dad have very fortunately just let me do my own thing. Mm-hmm. And I've made a ton of mistakes, but I've also been quite fortunate. The small mistakes I've made have never got me out of the game. I do think that people live for these keystone points, these markers in their life. An interesting thing to think about is, what are the stakes that you plant in the ground that you look back on as momentous moments in your life? Graduating high school, graduating college, graduating university, getting married, birth of your child, purchase of your first house, parents' death, and then your death, really. And you think is that it? Is that the race of life? It's kind of front loaded with some cool stuff around the late end of my teens, and then there's a couple of bits thrown in over the next 20 years, and then it's death. Are those the things that I'm looking forward to? But COVID, interestingly, will be something that all of us will remember. Mm-hmm. It is a global, species-wide temporal break that everybody has felt. Guy in Wuhan, even the people in New Zealand who are no longer suffering with COVID, even they know 2020, 2021 were the years that this global pandemic happened. And I hope that it reminds people that, holy shit, maybe just waiting for tomorrow, doing things for when I get the job, the car, the house, the wife, the child, the dog, the whatever. Yeah, I think people need to meditate on death more. And oddly, that's probably one of the good things that we can say has come out of COVID.
Yeah. How much work do you think it takes to feel fulfilled?
That is a good question.
Because I feel, for example, when I take my YouTube channel only, it takes a lot of work, but I never say I work hard, because this is kind of a cringy thing to say. I work super hard for my channel, because no one cares. Actually, what counts is the result, what you put out into the world, right? If you inspire people, motivate people. But then I try to measure how much effort did I put into YouTube, and then try to estimate roughly, okay, well, how much work does it need to be a success overnight, or an overnight success, however you want to put it.
Are you talking about internally to you, your state, or objective metric outside to the world?
Both.
Okay, I think the biggest competitive advantage that anyone can find is to get yourself into a job or an occupation or a hobby which to you feels like fun, but to everybody else feels like work. It's trite to say it. This is self-development 101, but if you can do something which feels like play to you and to everyone else looks like you're banging your head against a wall and they couldn't believe how hard you're working, you have found your competitive niche, because you're going to outwork those people and it's not even going to feel like work to you. This is why, one of the reasons perhaps why I've seen some success with my show, that I want to have conversations all the time. I would have been criticized for it at school. I talked too much. I talked too loudly. My teacher could always hear my voice from the back of the class. And by some quirk of this version of the simulation that we live in, I have managed to find a way to monetize, weaponize, utilize that. And now there's a platform. The people that are listening, you may have a perfect example of this. One of the world's best color pickers. So she makes color wheels and palettes for interior design companies and for fashion brands. And she was interviewed and someone asked her, what is it about you that makes you so special? Like, how have you managed to be so fantastic at your job? What was your training? What was your process? And she says, well, I got no real training. And I didn't even study this at university. But when I was 11 years old, my parents got me the biggest Crayola crayon and coloring pencil set that was available out of this catalog. And I would just use these pencils down until they were gone. So when you look back to what you did during your childhood, how did you spend your time? What fulfilled you then? When you didn't have bills to pay, when you didn't have any responsibilities to fulfill, what fulfilled you then? And for me, I listened to a lot of audiobooks because I was playing on my own because I was an only child. So because I didn't have anyone to talk to, I'd listen to audiobooks. Roll the clock forward 20 years. What's an audiobook? It's a podcast. So like, oddly, we come in full circles like this. Maybe you played a particular type of sport as a kid and you've never really picked it back up. I guarantee you that if you go and play on a Sunday morning, you will feel so much joy from doing that. Maybe when you were growing up, you had to look after your parents, or you had to look after a brother or a sister that was ill or was a little bit dependent or whatever. Like, maybe your goal in life or your most fulfillment in life is going to come from being a parent. Maybe you're going to be like just an unbelievable top tier, top 1% mother or father. Maybe that's the thing that you're going to bring to the world. I think we often have too much of a narrow definition of where fulfillment comes from. A lot of people in the meritocracy that we have in 2021 believe that it's from work, it's from achievements, all that sort of stuff. But man, just being a good neighbor, being a good member of your community, these things count. They do. I know that they're not valued. And I don't value it in myself, but I have to remind myself, and it's good to say it out loud, I have to remind myself that these things matter, that being a good functioning member of society. You mentioned something earlier on as well that I think is really important. You talked about what matters are the actions that you make. And this is something that everybody needs to take on, which is actions matter more than intentions by a factor so big that I can't even say it. Essentially, your intentions matter for shit, because all that we can tell are the actions that you make about it. You can have the most wonderful thoughts. You're so forgiving. You often think about other people. If you don't tell them, they don't know. If you act like a prick when you're at work, no one else is going to think that you're a nice guy, because they don't get to hear what's inside of your head. They just get to hear what comes out of your mouth. So focus on doing things, adding things to the world that make the world better, not just thinking about things that make the world better. And in terms of growing a YouTube channel, it's taken me 3 years and 450 videos to get to the stage where it's even a slightly appreciable level of growth. Now, there are some growth loops that you can iterate on more quickly. If I was to go back, I'd be able to do it more quickly than I am now. Mm-hmm. But being honest, man, like, especially if you're not clickbaiting your way to the top of the YouTube algorithm, if you're trying to put out content that makes people think, that's slightly longer form, that's about complex topics, it's not OnlyFans here. Like, this isn't Instagram. This is something that takes time to find your niche. And also, if it came easily, if the fulfillment came easily, if the achievements came easily, they wouldn't be worth anything anyway. Part of the reason that I'm so proud about the way that my show looks and the things I'm able to talk about is that they were hard earned. They were earned over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of standing right here in front of this microphone, talking. And that's the beauty of it. That's why the journey is all that matters rather than the destination, because it's going to be all journey and almost no destination.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, Chris. When it comes to training your mind, because we also want to talk about the mind in general, because the podcast is called The Engineered Mind. When it comes to the mind, how do you train your mind to perform better, quote unquote? And of course, we are humans. We sometimes mess up. We don't feel the way. Maybe we edit the podcast in a day, or maybe we edit it in 2 hours, as we talked before the podcast recording. How do you personally approach it and become the better version of yourself?
Another good question, man. I mean, sleep is a huge part of it. It's not as phenomenological or complex as people think, but almost all of us are chronically underslept. And it is one of the biggest competitive advantages that I think almost everyone's leaving on the table. Just get more sleep. Be in bed. You need to sleep for 8 hours. That means you need to be in bed for 9 hours. Now, the Gary V hustle and grind meritocracy mentality doesn't like this because, bro, if I can just go to bed at 3 and get up at 7 and not feel it, then I'm fine. All right, but you're not going to be performing at the level that you could. Your emotions are going to be all over. Your thoughts aren't going to be as quick. And you can separate yourself out from the pack far better, far more easily with quality than with quantity. I don't need more hours from you. I need the hours from you to be better. And that realization for me made all the difference. It's not the person who publishes the most videos on YouTube that has the biggest channel. It's the person that publishes the best videos on YouTube that has the biggest channel. In terms of sort of inner monologue and mental talk, I struggle with that still. My inner monologue is quite deprecating. It can be quite mean. The first thing to realize, and the main realization that everybody requires, is that you are not your thoughts. The voice that speaks in your head is not you, because you don't choose what comes out of that mouth, that inner monologue. You're the person that hears it speak. You're not the speaker. And it's taken 5 years of rereading You Are Not Your Thoughts over and over again for me to genuinely believe that that's the truth. The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer is a fantastic book on this. It's really accessible. It's quite sort of fluffy. So if anyone wants to kind of read a little bit more about this will really improve your understanding. But just know that no matter how you do a thing, no matter what happens in the real world, almost all that cause you suffering is to do with your interpretation of how it happened. Marcus Aurelius is, the universe is change and life itself is but what we deem it. Life itself is but what we deem it, because we don't experience the world, we experience our mental model of the world. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you realize that, hang on, if I can just try and breathe, try and have a little bit of a mindfulness gap here. My boss at work is calling me into a meeting to have a really bad thing. I can feel the anxiety in me. I can feel myself getting hot. I can feel my neck and my shoulders are up and my breathing's tight. It's okay. Even if you get fired today, there is not a line at the door. You're not going to go hungry. You're not going to starve. You're not going to freeze in a cave. You have a 100,000-year-old piece of programming operating in 2021, and it is wildly, wildly unmatched. The same thing goes for having an argument with someone about something that doesn't matter. You're never going to get this moment back. This moment's not going to come again. So those thoughts that are going through your head, like, really, is this the highest calling that you've got right now? Meditation is a massive help. I meditate a lot. I'm just about to break 1,000 days, which is like going to be a nice milestone. But just realizing that there is an opportunity in between the stimulus of something happening and the response of you reacting, that you can just breathe and just remember that it's okay. It's cool. I've dealt with this before. everybody that's here, everybody that's listening to this, no matter how bad their thoughts have been this morning, last week, last month, last year, everyone that's here has made it here. All of those things that you were adamant, that you obsessed over, that you ruminated over, all of those things haven't come to pass. Every single one of them that you were certain, that you were so adamant was going to destroy your life, was going to wreck the business, ruin the relationship, and end you. And you're listening to this, so it didn't. And you need to have more faith in yourself. Believe that if you've got this far, that you will continue to go further. The final point to probably add here is, I think a lot of people have negative self-talk because they don't have a massive amount of self-trust. Mm-hmm. They don't believe the things that they tell themselves. And sadly, this is often with good reason. So if you think that, imagine yourself as a friend who you often invite out for dinner, and that friend turns up late or doesn't turn up at all, or they make a mess at dinner. That is you and yourself. Self-esteem is the reputation that you have with yourself. And if you continue to make promises and not keep them, just like the friend that you stop inviting out to dinner, you're going to stop believing the things that you tell yourself. So you need, if you don't feel like you like who you are, if you keep on doing things and not making them happen, start smaller. Build up confidence, self-confidence in yourself by doing little things. 1 push-up, 2 push-ups. Well, that's dumb. Why would I do 1 or 2 push-ups? Because it means that you've kept the promise. That's what matters. What matters is keeping the streak going and keeping the promise to yourself and building your self-esteem up. It doesn't matter about the effect. It's all about the identity that you associate with the effect. And before long, the identity will be ahead of the effect that you're getting. And you're like, oh, hang on a second. Identity, Gym Chris wants to train more than personal Chris does. Hang on, I better catch up. I better do 50 push-ups, a run, a 5K, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think focus on the mindfulness gap. Focus on being compassionate with yourself. Remember about being present, and try whenever you can to keep a promise. And not break it in a way that makes you lose faith, because that can become a very sort of destructive spiral.
Mm-hmm. Love it, Chris. Also, to everyone listening, I mean, we all survived 100% of our bad days, right? So here we are. For some people, a critical thought might be, or what they would like to say under the video is, okay, it's easy for Chris to say that, talking about self-confidence and stuff. He looks like a model, and he's a buff dude. Why should I even listen to him? It's like the rich guy saying, follow your passion. Money doesn't buy happiness. You know? What advice would you give them if they don't want to listen to you?
They don't have to. And also, anybody who looks at someone who is objectively physically attractive and thinks that that means that they've got stuff sorted inside hasn't learned anything. Like, I, throughout all of school, was pretty badly bullied. I was an only child. I sounded different. I don't have the accent of where I'm from. I went to a state primary, state secondary, state college. So I very much sort of stood out like a sore thumb. I spent between the age of like 13 and 14, I spent my lunch times in my history teacher's classroom because I'd found more connection in an empty classroom than in a hostile schoolyard. So for someone to then choose to bestow on me, that guy's good looking, or that guy's a model, or that guy's got a successful podcast, he must have had everything handed to him, or he must just be positive and happy and doesn't understand struggle. Mm-hmm. They're just not a serious thinker. They don't understand how nuanced and developmental people's lives are. I still have a lot of the thought loops that I deal with are the voices of mean kids from school. A lot of the motivation for me to continue to do the things that I do probably comes from a place of negativity, which is me proving that I am worthwhile, that I am worthy of love, I'm worthy of acceptance. I read in a book the other day, The Moral Animal, many children who struggle to gain status and compete normally just through building and bonding friendships will often acquire knowledge and academic acumen so that they are required by society at large. And holy fucking shit, if that's not like part of some of the things that I've done. I'm like, look, if I'm smarter, clever, if I can have a better insight, people will need me, people will want me, they desire me to be around them. Because, and what's the insinuation of that? That I am not enough to be wanted or loved or liked. Without that, I need to offer someone more just so that I can step through the doors, which is a totally wrong. I know for a fact that people are just happy, normal people, when you get outside of the schoolyard, which can be quite hostile, normal people just want to be friends, just want to have a connection. You don't need to try and fucking change their life every other sentence. You don't need to offer them gifts of free things or connections or networking or anything. People just happy with that. But yeah, the longer point there is just someone's outward appearance does not reflect their inner experience, and certainly not across time. I've been through the fires of self-deception and sort of self-hatred, and I've spent days and days in bed just drowning under the sheer weight of existence. These aren't the things that someone would expect to hear from the guy that's got it all sorted and figured out. And yet, I'm really, really happy that they happened in a bizarre way, because they've given me insights that allow me to say this. They allow me to talk in this way. And hopefully someone else listens and goes, oh, okay, I didn't think that other people thought like that. I didn't think that other people got guilty about being depressed when there's nothing to be depressed about. And the fact that they've got nothing to be depressed about makes their depression even more shameful and feel like it's laden with guilt. But it's true. And sadly, no matter how many houses you've got or how much money you've earned or how big the YouTube channel is, like, the inner work is what makes the difference. I'm not better now than I was 5 years ago because I've got 120,000 subs on a YouTube channel. I'm better now than I was 5 years ago because I've learned to not listen to the thought that's in my head because it's not me, to have a mindfulness gap, to focus on process, not destination, and all that other stuff.
How do you train that personally? Is it repetitiveness, like in the sense of the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, that you say you have spaced repetition all the time, you tell it to yourself, so I won't forget it?
Yeah, perhaps. Certainly one of the big changes I've made has been gratitude journaling.
This is good.
It's almost impossible to feel resentful or depressed when you're being grateful. They're polar opposites, right? They're opposite ends of the scale. That's a big part of it. Being grateful for things, doing things every day that I know that move me towards my goals, having faith in myself, building up faith in myself. That is something that you do every day. In terms of training it, man, like, the best thing that I found, I was quite fortunate with the timing of my sort of intellectual awakening, because it was just as Joe Rogan was really taking off. It was like a year before Jordan Peterson had his incident with Bill C-16. It was just as Sam Harris was really sort of starting to come to the front. It was 2 years before Brett Weinstein. So I've just had, over the last 5 years, this wealth of people talking about intellectually, emotionally intelligent, mindful content that just helps you to think about you. So my advice to anyone that's listening that thinks, oh, I want to understand myself better, watch things on the internet until you find a person whose voice speaks to you, and just consume everything that they've ever made. Like, I'm sure that if I was Ali Abdaal, there would be a much more structured way to do this. He would have a hierarchy, pyramid of like entry base and foundation and stuff like that. But I don't know how that works. I'm not organized in that way. My solution is just crushing volumes of mindful content. And it seems to have worked quite well. I'm sure I could have done it in probably half the time or half the discomfort. It could have been much more productive if I'd planned it out better. But I didn't plan it out better. So I listened to The School of Life by Alain de Botton. I listened to a lot of Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, listened to a lot of Rogan. I spent time reading evolutionary psychology, which reminded me that for the most part, the things that I think are just the mercy of my genes trying to get me to do stuff in an environment that they're not matched for. You have to do the work, sadly. There's no quick fix. And this is why there are so many different routes and paths that people take. If I was to give like a minimum viable product prescription, it would be spend as much time away from your phone as possible. read for just 15 minutes a day, but read good things. Get a Kindle, buy a Kindle. It's about 80 quid. Ask someone for it for your next birthday. Find a person that you enjoy and listen to them or watch them as much as you can. I think that'd be a good place to start.
Awesome. Do you think in your childhood being alone, because I see parallels, a lot of parallels between us, do you think you paid the price earlier on and then you now can earn basically the benefits of, because you paid the price as a child, right? You were alone, you were suffering emotionally, and that's how you build up the confidence and emotional intelligence, because there's a saying which is like emotional intelligence eats IQ, or EQ eats IQ for breakfast. Do you think that's true? Or do you think that also paying the price in your childhood, do you think this analogy makes sense in your case?
Yeah, I think it does. I'm not sure about paying the price in childhood being worth it. I'm yet to be proven wrong that the source code that the rest of our life gets written upon, that is embedded in us before the age of 11 or 12, I'm yet to be proven that can be fully deprogrammed. And that to me makes it not worth it. It to me, it is ignorance bliss, basically. Like, it is both a blessing and a curse to feel everything so very deeply, right? Okay, well, like, if you can get all of the blessings without any of the curses, then fantastic. But that being said, especially over the last year, there are certain objective advantages that you get. I'm able to work better on my own, self-sufficiently, than other people, because I'm used to being on my own, because I've always been on my own. But on the flip side of that, it means that when it comes to relationships, it's more difficult for me to find a way to slot someone into my life, because it's just me.
Yeah.
Now, how am I supposed to slot someone else into my life? I don't have other people in my life. That's me. I have friends. I enjoy phone calls with them. I spend time with them. But like, it's still my life and they're a part of it. They're never my life. And that's going to have to change, because I want a family. I'm excited to be a dad. I can't wait to be a dad and like bring up some absolute monsters of kids. They're going to be emotionally intelligent. They're going to be balanced. They're going to understand the way that they think. And I can't wait to do that. But I'm going to have to get over a lot of this self-sufficiency. So everything comes with a cost, man. Like, you don't get, people look at Elon Musk and Conor McGregor or Kim Kardashian, and they look at these people and they think, wow, I really want to be that guy. I really want to be whoever it is. But they don't know the price that Elon Musk has to pay to be Elon Musk, or Conor McGregor. Like, Elon Musk might hate the way that he looks in the mirror. Like, Conor McGregor might not have had an erection in years. Or Kim Kardashian might have this terrible thought loop every time her head hits the pillow. Like, is that the price that would you pay that price to be Elon Musk or Conor McGregor or Kim Kardashian? That's the way it should be. And that goes back to what you said earlier on about like how people perceive us, right? Like, is it worthwhile?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. Once you start talking, I'm getting drawn into the thought process and thinking even more about it. I really appreciate that, Chris. I think that was the saying from Mike Tyson's trainer, Cus D'Amato, who said that the body is only here to carry the mind. But looking at your Twitter pictures where you like emerge from the water and come out like, I don't know, like super buff dude, do you think that once you start training or doing fitness, that it also feeds the mind in a positive way?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I mean, I have not been able to. My mind and my thoughts aren't as quick at the moment because I can't go to the gym, because all the gyms in the UK are shut, which is a disadvantage. But yeah, and really, it's just, it feels uncomfortable to not be physically fit. If you're not physically fit, you can't mentally be all that you want to be. Mm-hmm. And most people want one of those two things. Whatever it is they're trying to achieve in life requires them to be some combination of physically and mentally fit, or an extreme in one of them. So they both facilitate each other. Everybody has to train.
Mm-hmm. How do you personally approach fitness in general? Do you have a special program that you follow, or is it like you go by feeling, by mind-muscle connection, how people call it?
Right now, it's right at this very moment, it's almost nothing, which is why I'm somehow managing to get skinnier, fatter, and less fit all at the same time, which I didn't even think was possible, but I've managed to do that somehow. But when I train normally, it's just typical bodybuilding stuff right now. I'm a massive fan of CrossFit. I spent a long time doing Thai boxing and kickboxing and Muay Thai. I just like exercise, man. Like I always exercised as a kid, and I enjoy physical pursuits now. For me, I've been training for long enough to know what to do, but 4 by 12 on 5 exercises of a muscle group, work like chest and back, shoulders and legs, and then arms and abs and core on a conditioning day. Like that's a 3-day split, and you can do that once a week to maintain your condition and take you, including the travel time to and from the gym, it's maybe a 7-hour investment per week. Like it's not that much, but again, it's hard for people to start if they haven't got that momentum going. So they need to get into that. And for the people who are further down that line and are training a lot, like remember that no one gives as much of a shit about your condition as you do. Like no one cares about your condition anywhere near as much as you do. The girl that you think is going to notice the fact you've dropped from 12% to 11% body fat doesn't care. And the job interview that you're going for, or the anything, and this is coming from someone who's a professional model, right? Who's like built around his looks. I mean, I couldn't get super fat, and I'm probably on the verge of getting too fat now, but no one cares about the way that you look. So find a training plan that you enjoy. Do the thing that you enjoy. That could be rugby, it could be a team sport, it could be a solo sport, it could be golf, it could be anything. Just find the thing that you enjoy, do it, progressively overload it, and just try and do it regularly. That's it. That's all there is to it.
Coming back to your childhood, was there someone from the bodybuilding industry that you looked up to? Maybe Ronnie Coleman, I don't know, back then.
Greg Plitt, man. You remember Greg Plitt?
Yeah, sure.
That died? Yeah. So, I mean, he was a big part of it. I was part of like the Ziz culture as well. That was a big thing for me, like bodybuilding.com forums and all that sort of stuff. It was a golden era, man. 14 years ago was a golden era for bodybuilding because no one knew what we were doing. No one had an idea about how much protein should I have? How many sets should I do? Will cardio make me lose my gains? You didn't know. And it was just people on a bodybuilding.com forum claiming that they knew. And then you'd do it. You'd see some IFBB pros arms workout and go, yeah, I'm going to do that. And it would annihilate you. And you'd wake up the next day thinking that was ridiculous. I can't straighten my arm. But you'd do it just to try and see what happened.
Did you also get the Flex magazines back then?
So I was always online, but I know the ones that you mean.
Yeah, they were like you had like 8-hour arm workouts inside. You were like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Sounds like a great way to spend my day. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Rich Piana style. What would you say was your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it, Chris?
So I get asked this more often than I think I should do. Being honest, man, like I'm very fortunate with the number of, or the lack of failures. Like I haven't had big failures ever. I ruptured an Achilles last year. That was the first time that I've ever had any serious physical injury. Never broken a bone. I probably think that the biggest failure was a compounding of not being truthful to myself, not giving myself the self-care. And that was born out of a lack of courage, that people wouldn't like me for who I truly was, which was born out of the way that I was treated in school and the way that I saw myself from school. But I played a role for a very long time of being this big name party boy on campus around town, and thought, okay, I've seen some social success with this, so I'll continue. I'll become the caricature of that version of me. I'll become the excess version of that version of me, because maybe that'll make people like me more. But the persona that you play is incapable of receiving love. It can only receive praise. And that's how you can feel hollow in victory and alone in a crowd, because you can have all of the adoration in the world, but if people are adoring someone that isn't you, it just feels hollow. Like, we don't love Russell Crowe, we love Gladiator. We don't love Chris Hemsworth, we love Thor. And that was probably the biggest failure, was just not having the faith or the confidence or the courage to just be me. And sadly, I started burying that, who that person was and his truths and his interests and his desires and all that sort of stuff, under mountains and mountains of habits and lifestyle and friendships and connections and self-belief now laid on top of that, of believing I'm some other thing. And I imagine it must be what it's like if someone hid their sexuality from themselves. You know, if someone was ashamed to be gay or ashamed to be straight, I imagine it must be what it's like for them. And then one day they go, okay, this has gone too far. And that was it, man. But I'm still working through it. It's not as if I'm a finished article. But that being said, like, it makes me, the fact that I've managed to go from where I was to where I am now and how much more happier and fulfilled and mindful and insightful I feel, it gives me a lot of hope that other people can achieve it as well. And that's, I suppose, the goal of most of the things that I do, is to try and show people the steps that I took from where I was to where I am now, and hopefully help them facilitate that journey too.
Yeah, and I mean, you're a great person, Chris, and the way you convey a message through your podcast and also in this show is really motivating for a lot of people, especially like for myself at least. The listeners have to decide for themselves. Going back to the beginning, because I quoted Joe Rogan, he also had one motivational video where he said that be the guy, because you love this kind of underdog role. This is where the parallel between us is. We were kind of the underdogs. We want to succeed in the world somehow, if it's now via YouTube or any other channel or any other medium. We want to be the underdog in our own movie, which is life. And then we want to be the hero at the end, because every hero movie starts off, I don't know, the hero being on the street, and then the having the uprise of the hero, and then at the end you succeed and be the hero, so to speak. Is it how you see life as a movie, where you are the underdog in the beginning?
I'm not sure about the underdog thing, but you are definitely the hero of your own movie. And the Rogan video that you're referring to is really, really good. And what it reminds us is that there really only is the self. Even the people, even if you were born a twin, even if you have a genetically identical twin, that person is essentially just standing on the shore waving cheerily as you drown in the swell of life. That's what life is like. Your consciousness, that person that's inside of your head, you better make friends with them, because they're going to be there until the day that you die. So you have to become friends with yourself. You have to work out what it is that you want to be, who it is that you want to be, what it is that you want to do with your time, and just go after it. And we're the lead character, the author, the illustrator, and the narrator of our lives. And yet we spend so much of our time plagiarizing the story of others by looking over their shoulder and trying to lead some of the tale. And that's sad, man. Like, that's going to lead us to a life that we regret. So what's the life that you want to lead? What is the way that you want to exist in this world? And just do that.
Absolutely. And also that you mentioned Elon Musk. Some people try to copy the blueprint of, they look at the videos saying you have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, then you will become a billionaire. And people try to copy it and say, hey, why does it not work? Well, you have not put in the work, right, to become a billionaire. So
also, why the fuck do you want to be a billionaire? Yeah. How much money is enough?
Yeah.
Honestly, like how much fucking money is enough? Like, I don't need $1 billion. I don't need $1 million. If it comes as a byproduct of doing something that I love, then great. And if it doesn't matter. It does not matter. The way that you feel about yourself, the level of self-respect and self-esteem that you have, if it's missing, it will never, ever, ever be filled by a hole that is the shape of money. It will never, ever, ever be filled by a hole that is the shape of social media followers. And outwardly, people can make us believe that lie, because we see people that have money and have followers and believe that they're happy. I know from firsthand experience, I've been on more reality TV shows and around enough celebrities over the last decade to be able to say this firsthand. Those people are going to wake up one day and they're going to be fucking miserable. They are going to hate the person that they have become. And I struggle sometimes in my less honorable moments. I struggle to not feel joy at the potential of that happening, because I know that I've suffered and I know that I've gone through hard things, and I know that I do things that I think are virtuous, and that taking shortcuts has got people to other places. But in my more honorable moments, I know that if they're struggling, that hopefully some of the stuff that is available on the internet that's helped me can help them. That they can watch the Joe Rogan video, it's 2 minutes long. They can watch the Jocko Willink good video, it's 2 minutes long. And maybe that'll be the thing that makes them realize. But yeah, don't use people's objective metrics of success to gauge what you should want in life. What you want is your choice. It shouldn't be determined by what you see other people getting success from.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, before we wrap things up and go to my very renowned question rampage, which is 10 questions and you have to answer them in optimally one word or one sentence, do you think people watching, because these videos are so popular, these motivational videos, right? Why do you think they are so popular? Is it like because of social media, we have this dopamine kick every time and we want to get motivation but actually do nothing once we watch the motivation videos?
Yeah, I think you're right. Action matters more than intention, but we can give ourselves a big sense of satisfaction by just intending to do something and never actually getting around to acting on it. That's it, man. Like you can make yourself feel like you've made progress by thinking about making progress. Like I believe I'm quite big into New Year's resolutions. I'm quite big into motivation. I think that it's quite a good thing. I enjoy watching those Mulligan Brothers videos of like epic Jordan Peterson motivational medley. Like it's cool, but it's not it's not doing anything to your life. And that really is, in a world which is a knowledge economy, knowledge society, meritocracy, it's very easy for people to kid themselves that thinking is doing, but it's not. It never, ever, ever, ever has been. It has to be about, if you watch something that motivates you, think about how is this contributing to the way that I'm going to act. It needs to be that.
That makes complete sense, Chris. So now to the nasty part, question rampage. Let's start with the first one. What are you most proud of, Chris?
My mind.
That's a good one. It's also something people cannot steal, right? And to some extent. Favorite gym exercise?
Bench press. Gotta be.
Of course. Best tip to work on a hard task productively?
First things first, or break a large task up into smaller tasks.
Divide and conquer. Love it. If you could spend one day with a celebrity, who would it be? Can be dead or alive, by the way.
That's a really good question. I'd like to spend the day with Rogan. I really would. I think he's created this industry, which is where a lot of my passion goes. And I'd be interested in knowing how he approaches, what the similarities are between how he approaches his craft and how I approach mine.
Yeah, nice. Podcast from your channel you enjoyed recording the most?
Rory Sutherland, number 2, the second one that I did with him on behavioral economics. I asked the smartest behavioral economist on the planet what he thought about sex robots. Like, that, it doesn't get any better than that.
Have to watch that one for sure. Favorite exercise to calm down, apart from meditation?
Breath work. So, slow breath work, around about 1 to 2 breaths a minute for 6 minutes. Just fixes 90% of problems.
Favorite movie?
Interstellar.
Good one. Favorite YouTuber?
Logan Paul.
Okay. One superpower you would like to have?
Never need to sleep.
Good one. If you were a superhero, what would your name be? The productivity guru. No, that's not a good name.
Wisdom man. No, that would be terrible. Mindful man. I don't know.
No, what was it? What was it on Twitter? Deadlifting moron or so?
Yeah, I'll be deadlifting moron.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Trophy husband. I'll be trophy husband. How about that?
Yeah, that's also a good one. Chris, I really much appreciate your time being on the show. Hopefully there will be a second part. I had so many more questions, but I think 1 hour really does the job for the first part. I really much appreciate your time and also the thought process that initiated inside of me. So I really much appreciate it and hopefully see you in the second part.
Absolutely, man. I really, really enjoyed this. You're fantastic at what you do and long may it continue.
Thank you so much.